The warp is a strange and terrible place. You might as well throw a traveller into a sea of sharks and tell him to swim home as send him through the warp unprotected. Better it is not to let common man travel through the stars. Better still, let him not know such a thing is feasible. Philosopher, 5th Aid to Navigator DL. The void hummed with the soft thrumming of the iron resolve, the battle-scarred starship that served as both fortress and home to Lord Commissar Lex Norian. The endless expanse of space stretched out before them, an unyielding darkness occasionally pierced by the cold light of distant stars. Yet it was not the vastness of the void that weighed on the minds of the ship's crew, but the hunt, a hunt that had dragged them through sector after sector in pursuit of the traitor, Inquisitor Alexis Nakaya. In the dimly lit confines of the command chamber, Norian stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the distant warp point that would soon spit them out near their quarry. Beside him, as silent and lethal as death itself, stood Vindicari assassin Michaela de Vere. Her presence, a shadow in the corner of the room, was both a comfort and a reminder of the grave mission they undertook. The door to the chamber slid open with a low hiss, and the heavy footfalls of Garmash, the Bulgrin, echoed in the chamber. Unlike others of his kind, Garmash was more than just brute strength. His intelligence, though unconventional, had made him invaluable to Norian. With his armor plating scuffed from countless battles and a slab shield strapped across his back, Garmash was a formidable presence. "Lord Commissar," Garmash rumbled, his voice a deep bass that seemed to reverberate through the metal walls. "The crew's ready, engines prime for the jump." Norian nodded, but did not turn from the viewport. "Good. Soon we'll be upon Nakaya's trail once more. We cannot allow her to slip through our grasp again." Michaela, her voice as cold and precise as the weaponry she wielded, spoke from the shadows. "This chase has taken us far, Lord Commissar. Few would expect one of your station to be granted such authority, even in the pursuit of a rogue inquisitor. You act with the autonomy of a rogue trader or even an inquisitor yourself. The men speak of it in whispers." Norian allowed a faint smile to touch his lips, though it held no warmth. "You find it strange, Michaela, that a commissar should be given such latitude?" She tilted her head slightly, her eyes, hidden behind her mask, likely narrowing in thought. "Strange is not the word, my lord. Unprecedented, perhaps. It begs the question, how did this come to be?" For some time they stood in silence. Norian's mind drifted away as he was watching the void of cosmos through the observation panels of the ship. He thought of warp, its influence on the world, and on Nakaya, a proud inquisitor now twisted and turned to chaos. The Immaterium, often termed the Empyrean, the ether, the sea of souls, the realm of chaos, or most commonly known as the warp, is an alternate dimension composed entirely of psychic energy, mirroring and underpinning the four known dimensions of the material universe. The warp serves as the wellspring of all psychic powers, encompassing what is often referred to as sorcery or magic. It is also the dominion of the chaos gods and their countless demonic legions. Indeed, within the Imperium of Man, the terms chaos and the warp are frequently used interchangeably by those familiar with their existence. At its surface, the Immaterium presents itself as humanity's solution to the dilemma of faster-than-light travel. The warp acts as the medium for interstellar journeys, with starships entering this realm through the activation of a warp drive. Once within, they employ their conventional propulsion systems alongside the guidance of a psychic navigator to chart a course through the undulating currents of psychic energy, navigating as if through a vast, turbulent ocean. It is believed that the Immaterium's psychic energy arises directly from the presence of sentient beings in the universe, particularly those of the intelligent species populating the Milky Way galaxy. The warp is regarded as a dark mirror of the material universe, a roiling ocean of chaotic psychic energy where raw emotions are given tangible form. The warp is our greatest gift, and also our greatest threat. It is curse and boon, hope and terror, a raging inferno through which we must plunge, or else be lost. Navigator de Halnari. Many cultures, both human and Xenos, speculate that the Immaterium serves as the final resting place for the souls of the deceased, rendering it the universe's underworld. A voidcraft enters the warp by engaging its warp drive, at which point the vessel departs the material universe and emerges at a corresponding location within warp space. The ship is then swept along by the warp's currents, akin to a stone carried by a raging river. After traversing this chaotic expanse for an appropriate duration, the void ship activates its warp engines to re-enter real space. Due to the relative motion between the material universe and the warp, the void ship reappears at a new location, several light-years from its point of origin. This maneuver is known as a warp jump or hop, while the act of entering or exiting the Immaterium is referred to as a drop, shift, or translation. Warp travel is generally conducted in short jumps spanning 4 to 5 light-years. Longer voyages are fraught with unpredictability and peril, as the tides of warp space follow intricate and erratic patterns, often causing void ships attempting extended hops to stray significantly off course. Were these constraints universal, humanity would not have spread across the galaxy as it has. However, it is possible to execute long jumps across many light-years by expertly navigating within the warp itself, sensing, adapting to, and exploiting its currents to steer the vessel toward a corresponding destination in the material universe. This daunting task can only be accomplished by the strain of human mutants known as navigators, whose unique psychic abilities allow them to pilot a craft through the warp. Some individuals are sensitive to the fluctuations of warp space, enabling them, for example, to sense the approach of a void craft even before it re-enters the material universe. However, such sensitivity is generally underdeveloped in most humans. In a select few, this sensitivity is far more finely attuned. These individuals are known as psychers, capable of consciously harnessing and utilizing the energy of the warp to influence the material universe. Navigators possessing a more specialized form of psychic ability can look directly into the Immaterium without succumbing to madness and use this knowledge to steer their spacecraft through its ever-shifting currents. The Astronomicon is a psychic beacon centered upon Terra, projected into the warp through the immense psychic power of the Emperor of Mankind. The signal, crucial for navigation through the warp, is sustained by the continuous mental exertion of 1,000 human psychers, whose life forces are gradually consumed until death, at which point they must be replaced. The Astronomicon remains undetectable in the material universe, perceptible only within the Immaterium. Navigators rely on this signal to pilot their void ships across vast distances in the warp. The strength of the Astronomicon is most potent near Terra, where the Emperor resides as its source, and it gradually weakens as the distance from Terra increases. The signal spans a spherical region with a diameter of approximately 50,000 light-years. However, the Astronomicon does not extend to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Given Terra's location in the galactic west, a significant portion of the eastern galaxy lies beyond its reach. Moreover, the signal's range and strength are not constant, often being disrupted by localized disturbances within the warp. These disruptions, akin to the hurricanes and storms of a planetary weather system, are known as warp storms. These storms can be so severe and long-lasting that entire star systems may remain isolated for centuries. Warp storms not only obscure the Astronomicon's signal, but also pose extreme dangers to spacecraft. Any ship attempting to navigate within a warp storm does so at great peril, though there are stories of miraculous survivals and vessels being hurled tens of thousands of light-years off course. Yet warp storms are not the only hazards lurking within the Immaterium. Sentient energies and other immaterial beings inhabit this chaotic realm, entities born from and integral to the warp's ever-shifting essence. Few of these beings are benevolent, most are hostile, and mankind knows them as demons. The passage of time within the warp is another unpredictable factor. Time in warp space differs drastically from time in real space, with both moving at variable rates. It is only upon the completion of a warp jump that a ship's crew can ascertain how much real space-time has elapsed. The passage of time in real space is termed real time, while time aboard a spacecraft in the Immaterium is referred to as warp time. The relationship between real-time and warp time is complicated. For instance, a journey of 100 light-years might seem to take between 2.5 to 9.5 solar hours for the crew within the warp. Yet in real space, anywhere from 3 solar days to 3 solar weeks may have passed. These durations exclude the time required to travel to and from the Mandeville points within each star system before initiating or concluding a warp translation. Reaching a Mandeville point at sublight speeds can take anywhere from several solar days to weeks, and a similar duration is needed to re-enter real space at the destination's Mandeville point. The Imperium spans approximately 75,000 light-years from one edge to the other. A journey of such magnitude could consume between 75 to 300 solar days in subjective warp time, while in real time it could span between 6 and 40 Terran years. Before a starship can venture into the warp, it must first journey at sublight speeds to a star system's Mandeville point. This point represents the nearest distance from which a void ship can safely enter or exit the Immaterium from its origin or destination system. Upon activating its warp drive, the spacecraft is thrust into a dimension vastly different from the material universe. One might imagine warp space as a dense, almost fluid-like energy, devoid of stars, light, or life as it is known in the physical realm. Within this strange dimension, a void ship navigates using its primary Newtonian reaction drive, such as a standard Imperial plasma drive, following the powerful eddies and currents of the warp until it reaches a point corresponding to its destination in real space. The greatest challenge of warp travel lies in the inability to detect the spatial movement of warp space once a void ship is within its depths. The vessel can only continue on its course, its crew relying on faith that they are heading in the correct direction. The longer the ship remains in the Immaterium, the higher the likelihood of encountering unexpected currents that could unknowingly veer it off course. Navigation through warp space can be accomplished in 2 ways: the calculated jump and the piloted jump. All warp drives are equipped with navigational mechanisms. When the void ship is still in real space, these systems monitor the ever-changing movements of the part of the warp corresponding to the ship's current location. This system provides a window into warp space. By observing these movements, it becomes possible to calculate a course, make corrective maneuvers, and estimate the journey time to a proposed destination. This calculation method operates under the assumption that the warp currents observed from real space remain relatively stable during the flight. This technique is referred to as a calculated jump. However, it is unsafe to attempt a calculated jump of more than 4 light-years in a single leap. The longer the jump, the greater the risk of encountering significant changes in warp current movement. The second and more effective method of warp navigation is the piloted jump. This approach depends on 2 key factors: the presence of navigators and the psychic beacon of the Astronomicon. The Astronomicon, centered on Terra, is controlled and directed by the psychic power of the Emperor. The Astronomicon serves as a psychic beacon that extends into warp space. A navigator aboard a void ship in the warp can detect these signals and steer the spacecraft accordingly, adjusting for changes in the currents as they proceed. A piloted jump can cover much greater distances than a calculated jump. Most piloted jumps span no more than 5,000 light-years at a time, though longer jumps have been accomplished. A typical interstellar voyage might begin with a cargo ship in orbit around an imperial world. Tiny shuttlecraft tirelessly transfer precious minerals, foodstuffs, crew, and manufactured goods from the planet's surface to the vast void ship. This loading process can take several solar days or weeks as the shuttles make repeated trips to the massive vessel. Once the loading is complete, the enormous spacecraft slowly accelerates out of orbit under the power of its primary reaction drive. The void ship moves toward the outer rim of the solar system, gradually increasing speed with great caution. Although the ship's engines are capable of tremendous acceleration, the risk of collision with interplanetary debris is significant if the void ship accelerates too quickly or excessively. As the sun diminishes in the ship's rear view, the density of debris decreases, allowing the ship's speed to reach approximately 1% of light speed in the vacuum of space. After several solar weeks of travel, the void ship arrives at its departure point into the warp known as the Mandeville Jump Point. This point lies around the star system like the circumference of a circle, marking the location where interplanetary debris density falls below the maximum warp threshold and gravitic stresses no longer impede the transition from real space. Once this invisible boundary is crossed, it becomes safe to activate the warp engines to enter or exit the Immaterium. Any crew reckless or impatient enough to engage the warp drive prematurely would be fortunate if their ship were merely hurled thousands of light years off course. Far more likely, the void ship would be torn apart and destroyed, its fate unknown and its existence lost to the void forever. With the successful activation of its warp drive, the ship is wrenched from the material universe and plunged into the dimension of the Immaterium, marking the true commencement of its interstellar voyage. Guided by a navigator, ships traverse the Immaterium through jumps that can span up to 5,000 light years. Only particularly lengthy journeys require more than a single jump. Despite this, nearly 2 solar weeks may elapse aboard the ship before it is ready to conclude its jump, while due to the temporal distortions within the warp, more than a standard year might have passed in real space. The ship re-emerges into real space just beyond the Mandeville point of its destination solar system. If fortune favours it, the ship will exit close to the jump point. Otherwise, it may face additional solar weeks of travel to reach the inner planets. Caution dictates allowing a safe margin when navigating toward a star. For re-entering real space within the radius of the Mandeville point would have the same disastrous consequences as prematurely activating the warp drive during the outbound journey, almost certainly leading to catastrophe. Now prepared for its final leg, the ship begins by broadcasting its arrival to its destination and synchronizing with the new time coordinate. The extreme disparity between time in warp space and real space leaves the crew uncertain whether their journeys spanned mere solar months or standard years. Initially, the void ship travels at approximately 1% of light speed, gradually decelerating as it moves through the denser inner regions of the solar system. Eventually, it reaches its destination, where swarms of shuttles once again engage in the busy work of loading and unloading cargo and passengers in preparation for the void ship's next voyage. Theoretically, it is possible to travel to any location in the universe via the warp. However, the shifting tides of the Immaterium make travel between some star systems more feasible than others, and shorter warp jumps are invariably more precise than longer ones. This holds particularly true when maneuvering a large fleet, which might become dispersed across several light-years of space over the course of an extended journey. Long-established and well-charted warp channels connect star systems and entire regions of the galaxy, providing relatively stable routes through which the majority of Imperial shipping moves. A warp gate is a point in real space linked to another point in real space by a tunnel through the warp. These tunnels somehow evade the usual disturbances of the Immaterium, enabling journeys to be completed within a fixed time and in perfect safety. The existence of warp gates is something of a mystery, with ongoing debates about whether they are natural phenomena or artificially created. If the latter, their creators and their purposes remain unknown. Moreover, some warp gates have been artificially enhanced, their entrances marked by mechanical structures whose exact function is still a matter of speculation. Other warp gates appear as mere black holes in space. Warp gates can be found in the depths of space, at the edges of star systems, within star systems themselves, and even on planets. The largest of these gates are easily wide enough to allow the passage of spacecraft and are typically located at the periphery of a star system or among its outer planets. Smaller gates, only large enough to permit the passage of small vehicles or human-sized creatures, are mostly found on planetary surfaces and lead directly to other gates on the surfaces of distant planets. All gates are rare, with the smaller types being exceedingly so. Planetary gates are often concealed or respond only to specific electrical, psychic, or other signals, suggesting that their creators intended a certain degree of secrecy. All spacefaring species are eager to utilize warp gates when they encounter them, although determining their destinations can be perilous. Many gates seem to be malfunctioning and may randomly deposit a ship into the warp. Others lead to places that were once stars or planets but are now mere empty voids. there is always the risk of emerging into the heart of a distant, hostile alien star empire. It is possible that ships lost within warp space have been transported beyond the galaxy itself. Warp gates often become of immense importance to those who control them, frequently holding critical strategic value for the Imperium. Imperial commanders and other vested interests compete for control of a warp gate within their jurisdiction, and these ancient relics are often heavily fortified against external threats. A warp portal is a point in space where the boundary between the warp and real space thins, forming a stable gateway for entry and exit between these two dimensions. Unlike conventional warp travel, there is no need to activate a warp drive to traverse this portal. However, any vessel lacking a Geller field would be at great risk, as survival within the Empyrean without such protection is highly unlikely. Warp portals do not lead to a tunnel. Instead, a voidcraft entering one is immediately cast into the unpredictable currents of warp space. With precise maneuvering, it might be possible to re-enter normal space through the same portal from the other side. Yet, the true nature of these portals remains a mystery, and it is unclear whether they are natural anomalies resulting from non-Euclidean geometries or serve some hidden purpose. Certain alien species, such as the enslavers, creatures native to the warp, use these portals to traverse between warp space and real space. Similar to warp gates, portals can manifest anywhere in the universe, including on planetary surfaces. Some portals possess a physical form, while others remain invisible or take on the guise of a hole in the ground or a dark cave entrance. Despite their dangers, warp portals have proven useful on occasion. There are documented instances where spacecraft with damaged warp drives, trapped within the warp and facing certain destruction, have stumbled upon a warp portal, allowing them to return to real space. The strength of the barrier between reality and the warp is not uniform across the galaxy. In some regions, the veil is thin, permitting the influence of the warp to seep through. These areas can be either permanent or temporary and may vary in size, arising from random chance or the deliberate actions of malevolent chaos cults. Some thin spots are the remnants of experiments from the dark age of technology, while others result from psychic activity, extreme emotional outbursts, mass deaths, or other significant psychic traumas within a confined area. For instance, in the Ascalon sector, the erratic currents of the pandemonium lash against the boundaries of reality, weakening the separation between dimensions. In regions where the veil is thin, various disturbing phenomena can manifest, for the warp and its influence are inherently unpredictable and inconsistent. These places are often regarded as haunted or cursed, with residents reporting eerie voices, fleeting movements glimpsed out of the corners of their eyes, or nightmares that bleed into waking visions. Time might flow in reverse, temperatures might drop suddenly or fluctuate wildly, and auspexes and scanners might yield unreliable or contradictory data. Individuals in such areas might feel an inexplicable sense of unease or encounter strange and unsettling sensations, from tingling on their skin to the scent of burning flesh. The ruinous powers of chaos and their demonic minions reside in the portion of the Immaterium commonly referred to as the realm of chaos. Demons can only exist within the Immaterium unless specific conditions are met in the material world. The Immaterium is the source of power for both demonic and mortal followers of the four dark gods: Khorne, the blood god; Slaanesh, the prince of pleasure; Tzeentch, the lord of change; and Nurgle, the lord of decay. Their adherents will go to any lengths to increase this power and their standing with their profane masters. Each of the Chaos gods rules over a domain within the realm of chaos, each mirroring the deity's own nature and desires. Khorne presides over the blood god's domain, Nurgle over the land of the plague lord, Tzeentch over the realm of the sorcerer, and Slaanesh over the dark prince's realm. The realm of chaos is characterized by nearly constant warfare and strife among the demonic servants of the ruinous powers, who ceaselessly plot and battle against one another in an eternal struggle for dominance known as the Great Game, a conflict that can never be won. Consumed by this never-ending battle, the Chaos gods and their servants pay little attention to the affairs of real space, except when mortal actions threaten their ongoing schemes or present an opportunity to gain an advantage over their rivals in the Great Game. The formless wastes, also known as the chaotic abyss and the land of lost souls, are the vast regions of the Immaterium that do not fall under the control of any of the four major chaos gods. This expanse is a realm of ever-changing chaos, constantly reshaped by the psychic energies emanating from the sentient minds of the Milky Way galaxy, as well as the currents flowing from the realm of chaos. In the formless wastes, the laws of physics hold no power. The landscape is an ever-shifting nightmare where rivers of tar wind through petrified forests beneath blood-red skies, and vast stairways rise into the heavens only to loop back upon themselves endlessly. This surreal terrain is dotted with castles made of bone and fortresses of ichor, while pillars of fire burn ominously on the horizon. Every dream, nightmare, and vision experienced by the sentient beings of the galaxy finds its reflection within the formless wastes. This chaotic domain is also the hunting ground of demonic furies who eagerly seek out any prey, be it mortal or demon, that strays into their grasp. The formless wastes also serve as a refuge for greater demons and demon princes, strong enough to exert psychic control over their surroundings within the warp. These islands of dreadful stability stand out amid the chaos, some flickering into existence for mere moments, while others have endured as long as the ruinous powers themselves. Each of these subrealms is a small extension of the realm of chaos, shaped by the whims of its creator, often featuring shrines or temples dedicated to their beliefs. Some are even inhabited by demons born from the mind of the greater demon or demon prince, though these entities are usually short-lived, as they are often consumed by the more powerful furies that roam the wastes. These demons are generally weaker than those serving the four major chaos gods. It is believed that minor chaos gods sometimes establish their domains within the formless wastes. Also hidden within this chaotic expanse lies the dark demonic foundry known as the Forge of Souls. The Immaterium itself is a dimension of spiritual and metaphysical energy, shaped and sustained by the emotions and actions of intelligent mortals in the physical universe. Every sentient being in the material universe, save for the Necrons and the Catan, leaves a psychic imprint within the Immaterium. While the influence of a single mind is almost negligible, the combined imprints of an entire species, numbering in the billions, exert a tremendous impact on the very fabric of the warp. This suggests that the Immaterium was not inherently chaotic, but has been warped by the conflict, misery, and warfare that so often define the material realm. When an emotion or belief in an entity or concept becomes strong enough, it can give rise to a being within the warp. Many of these entities fade away when the emotions or beliefs that created them dissipate, but the most powerful and archetypal can become self-sustaining, spreading the thoughts and events that grant them form and power. These entities can even interact with the material world in ways that further reinforce the beliefs that sustain them. The strongest of these beings evolve into the gods and demons associated with specific groups or cultures. Nearly every intelligent species or force of will has its universal concepts or religious figures personified within the warp, whether they be chaos, Eldari, orc, or human. The extraordinary, seemingly magical abilities of psychically gifted individuals, known in the Imperium of Man as psychers, are fueled by the energies of the warp. When a psyker taps into this power, the demons and other native entities of the Immaterium are drawn to their mind like moths to a flame. Humans well trained in the psychic arts can resist these incursions to some extent. But the greatest fear of the Imperial Inquisition is that an untrained psyker of sufficient power could become the target of demonic possession. Such an event would open a gateway for the demonic servants of the ruinous powers to invade the physical world. Many cultures across the Milky Way galaxy, both human and Xenos, hold the belief that the Immaterium serves as the final resting place for the souls of the deceased. This notion carries a certain degree of truth. The Eldari, for instance, believe that upon death, their souls are drawn into the warp, where they are promptly consumed by their ancient nemesis, the chaos god Slaanesh. This fate stems from the Eldari's hedonistic and intensely psychic nature, which ultimately led to the birth of Slaanesh within the Empyrean following the catastrophic event known as the Fall of the Eldari. occurring sometime between the 29th and 30th millennia. Eldari souls possess a psychic gradient, making them irresistibly drawn to Slaanesh's insatiable hunger upon the death of their physical forms unless protective measures are in place. For the Asuryani Eldari, this protection comes in the form of spirit stones, which each individual carries. Upon death, these stones immediately capture the soul's psychic essence, allowing it to be safely deposited into the Craftworld's infinity circuit. There the soul becomes part of an eternal Gestalt consciousness, contributing to the collective mind of the dead. The Drukhari, on the other hand, pursue a more brutal means of self-preservation. Residing within the labyrinthine dimension of the webway offers them partial protection from Slaanesh, known to them as She Who Thirsts. However, even this refuge cannot offer complete safety, as Slaanesh will eventually claim their souls unless they constantly draw psychic sustenance from the suffering of others. This necessity drives the Drukhari to their malevolent ways, perpetually seeking out slaves to torture, not only for their sadistic pleasure but also as a means of preserving their corrupted souls. Among the mortal followers of the Chaos Gods, there is no doubt regarding their fate. When a mortal dies in real space, their soul is instantly swept into the warp at the moment of death, where it becomes prey to demons and other warp entities or is condemned to eternal torment. The only escape from this grim fate lies in surrendering oneself entirely to the worship and service of the ruinous powers, whether collectively as chaos undivided or individually. The dark gods may bestow their most powerful and devoted followers with a favored place within the realm of chaos upon death. The most successful chaos devotees might even ascend to the status of a demon prince, granting them immortality and dominion over a personal domain or demon world within the realm of chaos, or a warp rift such as the Eye of Terror. Believers in various sects of the Imperium of man's imperial cult also hold that when a person dies, their soul enters the warp. However, devout worshippers of the God Emperor of mankind believe that the Emperor shields his faithful within the warp from any harm, gathering the souls of the righteous to himself. Only those who have strayed from the Emperor's teachings, disobeyed his commands, or failed to carry out his will are at risk of being devoured by demons or enduring eternal punishment within the Empyrean. In this way, the adherents of the imperial cult view the warp as an analogue to the ancient Judeo-Christian concepts of heaven and hell. The warp becomes a hell for those unfaithful to the God Emperor, but it can also transform into a form of heaven for those who have remained true to his will. Whether there is any objective truth to this belief remains unknown, but the psychic nature of the Immaterium implies that the collective, strongly held convictions of mortals in real space can manifest a reality of their own within the warp. Given the vast number of human beings in the galaxy, many of whom are fervent, even fanatical believers in the Imperial Creed, this belief could hold significant sway. What is known with certainty is that those individuals within the Imperium who have demonstrated unshakable faith in their concept of the God Emperor, such as Euphrati Keeler and various other living saints, have occasionally performed feats that can only be described as miraculous. These miracles have been particularly potent when wielded against the servants of chaos, both demonic and mortal. Perhaps, as the ancient creed suggests, the Emperor truly does protect. The warp, a realm of pure psychic energy inherently hostile to all forms of organic life from real space, is home to its own myriad forms of alien life, both sentient and otherwise. Many of these entities are not sentient themselves, but rely on the absorption of psychic energies to sustain their existence. Naturally, they are irresistibly drawn to the psychic emanations of mortals in real space, whose minds are the very wellsprings that nourish the Immaterium. Among these creatures are the vampires, Psychnuain, astral spectres, astral hounds, and the nightmarish enslavers. Enslavers, born from the chaotic energies of the warp and the nightmares of sentient species, prowl the Immaterium much like sharks in an ocean. Their ability to psychically dominate and control other beings, even those as formidable as tyrannids and demons, is the source of their ominous name. It is believed that the only beings immune to the enslavers' influence are the soulless Necrons, who lack any psychic presence in the warp. Although enslavers primarily exist within the warp, They can breach the physical universe by exploiting the unprotected mind of a human psyker. When three enslavers form a trinity, they establish a psychic bond with their victim, gradually transforming the psyker over the course of 2-3 solar days into a living, pulsating warp gate. This gruesome portal allows the enslavers to enter the material universe. Enslavers bear a resemblance to an octopus, with a main body composed of two roughly circular sections stacked upon one another. They possess 8-12 smaller tentacles protruding from their lower half and two larger tentacles ending in suckers. Atop their upper body is a sensory organ, often referred to as an eye, which is typically reddish in hue. Their leathery skin, capable of changing color, is usually a light brown with pale tentacles. However, the enslavers pale in comparison to the true horrors of the warp, the demons of chaos. Starships navigating the Immaterium via warp drive are shielded from these malevolent entities by the generation of a Geller field. Should this protective field fail or malfunction, the ship's crew would be left defenseless against the terrifying denizens of the warp, likely to be consumed by demons or subjected to their malevolent whims. Norian finally turned to face them, his gaze hard and unyielding, like the edges of the blade he often carried. "It is a tale of necessity, assassin. One does not always choose the path they walk. Sometimes it is thrust upon them." He paced slowly, his footsteps measured as he spoke. "Nakaya, Alexis. She was once a trusted member of the Ordo Hereticus. Her zeal for rooting out heresy was unmatched, but it was that very zeal that became her undoing. She began to stray, to seek out forbidden knowledge, to delve into the darkest recesses of the warp in search of answers. Her methods grew increasingly unorthodox, and the purity of her cause became tainted by ambition." Gamash, his brow furrowed in concentration as he followed the Commissar's words, grunted in understanding. "She turned, didn't she? Turned on the Imperium." Norian's eyes darkened, his voice lowering to a near whisper. "Yes, she turned. But it wasn't as simple as that. Alexis was more than just a colleague. We had a history, a connection that went beyond mere duty. We shared much." He paused, his gaze drifting momentarily, as if seeing something only he could perceive. "But whatever bond we had was shattered when she chose her path. When she took those relics, those secrets that could doom entire worlds, she became excommunicate traitoris. The Inquisition declared her a heretic, but she is no ordinary foe. Her knowledge of the Imperium's workings, her understanding of our strengths and weaknesses, makes her a threat unlike any other." Michaela's voice cut through the air like a blade. "And they sent you after her?" "Not just me," Norian replied, a hint of something unspoken in his tone. "But I was chosen for this task. A task that requires not just the iron will of a commissar, but the freedom to act without constraint, to pursue this traitor across the stars without the burden of bureaucracy. The High Lords themselves sanctioned my mission, granting me the authority to act as both hunter and judge." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over them. "In this I am no different from an inquisitor or a rogue trader. I have the power to command, to sanction, to execute, and to destroy whatever is necessary to see Nakaya brought to justice." Garmash's eyes, gleaming with an uncharacteristic sharpness, met Norian's. "It's not the justice you seek, it's retribution, personal vendetta." Norian's gaze softened for a moment, a rare crack in his otherwise implacable demeanor. "Nakaya's betrayal is a stain upon the honor of those who once trusted her. I will see it cleansed, even if it costs me everything. If I fail, they will brand me a traitor." In silence, Lord Commissar once again looked at the distant stars. "The warp is also the domain of the greatest of all terrors, the four major chaos gods, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slanesh. Each of these dark deities resides within a separate kingdom in the realm of chaos, embodying the darkest aspects of the psyches of countless sentient species. Though the terms warp and chaos are often used interchangeably within the Imperium of Man, each chaos god maintains a distinct recognizable form, that embodies their nature and is instantly identifiable to their legions of demonic and mortal followers. Gods are not solitary within warp space. They have created servants from their own essence, beings mortals have named demons, drawing from ancient legends and religious mythologies. Though they are spawned from the same psychic energy as their masters, demons possess a nature somewhat distinct from that of the Chaos gods, and are the most numerous entities within the Immaterium. A demon is born when a Chaos god expends a portion of its power to create a separate being. This psychic energy binds together a collection of senses, thoughts, and purposes, giving rise to a personality and consciousness capable of moving through the warp. The Chaos God can reclaim this independent power at any time, ensuring the demon's unwavering loyalty. Only through the loss of this power can a demon be truly destroyed, its mind dissolving back into the swirling currents of the warp. Demons do not possess a physical presence within the warp, as the realm of chaos defies the laws of physics. Starships navigating these treacherous depths carry with them a bubble of reality when they enter using their warp drive. Lacking true physical forms, demons project an appearance conjured from raw psychic energy, a lesser reflection of their divine master's fundamental nature. The bizarre and inhuman forms demons project in the material universe are indicative of their status and allegiance to a chaos god. Though a demon may appear to have a physical form when manifested in real space, it is no more material than it is in the realm of chaos. In truth, demons are beings of pure warp energy given shape and substance. When a demon manifests in the material universe, it possesses particular invulnerabilities and weaknesses, along with strange powers derived from its psychic origins. Slaying a demon's physical projection does not kill it. Rather, it severs its connection to reality, leaving its true essence in the warp unharmed. When a demon is killed in the material universe, it is banished back to the warp. If not reabsorbed by its creator, it must remain in the Immaterium to regain its strength before it can manifest again. According to legend, a demon banished in this way cannot return for 1,000 Terran years and a day, though such beliefs are impossible to verify through study, as time itself is meaningless within the warp. Nevertheless, the humiliation of being banished is considerable, and the demon must endure the mockery of its peers until it can return to corporeal form and exact its revenge. The most powerful demons may call upon their servants and lesser demons to assist in their vengeance. However, demons are cautious in seeking such aid, as favors must inevitably be repaid, and no demon willingly submits to the dominion of another, whether mortal or demonic. For a demon to pierce the veil and enter the mortal universe, a rupture must occur between the warp and the material realm, known as a warp rift. These breaches in reality can vary immensely in size and nature, from colossal anomalies like the Eye of Terror or the Maelstrom to smaller, more transient fissures. Sometimes these rifts manifest spontaneously. At other times they are deliberately created by either mortals or the Chaos gods through supernatural means. The scale of these breaches can range from a mere thinning of the dimensional barriers to vast tears in reality, allowing entire demonic legions to flood into the material world. When conditions such as a warp storm or a sorcerous ritual weaken the barrier between the warp and real space, a demon can possess a mortal, transforming them into a living gateway through which demonic hordes can temporarily invade the material universe. These demonic incursions often leave real space profoundly tainted, warping and reshaping entire planets until they are consumed by the warp, becoming demon worlds. Given the catastrophic threat these events pose to mankind's survival, it is a little wonder that the Inquisition's demon hunters, the Ordo Malleus, are granted unrestricted resources and authority by the High Lords of Terror to combat such horrors. Frequently, the chaotic movements of the warp itself generate a breach into the material realm, allowing demons to pour through. These breaches might arise by chance, through events like the onset of warp storms, warp drive implosions, or a rogue psyker's mind erupting with uncontrolled power. Or they might be intentionally created through the dark rituals and blood sacrifices of chaos-worshipping mortals, enabling the teeming hordes of the chaos gods to break through into real space. At times, The sheer scale of mortal suffering, death and misery can create a warp rift large enough for a demonic legion to use as a portal. Warp rifts can last mere solar hours or even moments, for the nature of chaos is inherently volatile. A demonic force that passes through such a rift can find itself trapped in real space, where it will gradually weaken and fade as the chaos energy sustaining it is drained. Among these rifts, the most notorious and perilous is the Eye of Terror, which has endured for over 10,000 standard years. This massive warp rift, visible as a purple-red bruise upon the night sky from half the worlds of the Imperium, was created by the birth of the chaos god Slanesh in the early 30th millennium. The Eye of Terror is home to countless demon worlds, where demons and mortals alike, including the infamous traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines, wage endless war. Another significant warp rift is the Maelstrom, located near the galactic core, a sanctuary for thousands of pirates and renegade Space Marine chapters. There are also lesser-known warp rifts, such as the Heart of Darkness near the world of Attila, the Storm of Judgment that engulfs nearly all of the Caradriad sector, Hell's Gullet threatening the Beryllian system, and the infamous Screaming Vortex, marking the border between the Calixis sector and the Coronis expanse in the Halo stars. However, the most catastrophic warp rift in existence today is the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Great Rift. Born in the aftermath of the 13th Black Crusade and the destruction of the fortress world of Cadia, the Great Rift has severed the galaxy in half. Created when the rising power of the Chaos Gods finally tore open the fabric of real space, the Great Rift has ushered in warp incursions on a scale never before witnessed by humanity or any other intelligent species in the galaxy. It has cleaved the Imperium in two, with the Imperium Nihilus, the Dark Imperium, left cut off from the light of the Astronomicon on Terra, rendering interstellar travel and communication increasingly perilous and challenging. The existence of the Great Rift, stretching from the Eye of Terror in the galactic west to the Hadex anomaly in the east, now stands as the gravest threat to the continued survival of humanity. Warp rifts often arise from warp storms, turbulent expanses within the realm of chaos that mirror disturbances in real space, disrupting warp-dependent travel and communication. When these storms grow focused or powerful enough, they can stretch or even tear the fabric of reality. Warp storms are utterly unpredictable, sometimes isolating single planets or expanding to engulf entire imperial sectors. One of the most devastating warp storms in human history severed Terra itself from the rest of the galaxy for 5,000 standard years during the epoch known as the Age of Strife. Worlds caught in such catastrophic events become playgrounds for demons until the storm finally dissipates. A few warp storms have endured for so long that they are considered permanent, their self-sustaining energies trapping nearby planets and star systems in an inescapable vortex of chaos. Despite the myriad dangers it presents, the warp remains essential to the survival of humanity. Without the warp, there would be no psychers, no interstellar travel, and no interplanetary communication. Voidcraft traverse its ever-shifting tides, capable of crossing thousands of light-years in a fraction of the time it would take using conventional sublight drives. Through this means, humanity is bound together in a single interstellar imperium under the divine rule of the Emperor of mankind. Through astrotelepathy and the guidance of psychic mutants known as navigators, the worlds of the Imperium maintain their fragile connections. The Emperor's will is mighty, but his reach extends across the stars only because his fleets can traverse the warp, protected by complex Geller fields and raw faith that sustain the fragile bubbles of reality around each warship. While the warp enables humanity's vast numbers and strength, chaos itself would be vastly diminished without humanity's presence in the galaxy. The Chaos Gods feed on emotions and thoughts, growing ever more powerful in the process. Over millennia, each has feasted on a specific aspect of human nature: rage, desire, fear of death, and the hunger for change. Strengthened and shaped by the collective thoughts and emotions of reality's inhabitants, the Dark Gods nurture these same passions in humanity, ensuring their continued existence. As humanity has spread across the stars, its numbers have swelled immeasurably, fueling the Chaos Gods in turn. Thus, a perpetual cycle is established, with mortal follies and weaknesses feeding the dark gods, who in turn encourage mankind to further folly and weakness. For millennia, humanity has harnessed the power of the warp. Magicians, seers, witches, mediums, shamans, and exorcists have all tapped into its energies, often without full understanding, throughout human history. Psychers are those who manifest extraordinary abilities by drawing directly from the warp, channeling its unnatural energies to unleash blasts of destructive force, teleport objects, transmit thoughts across vast distances, and perform a myriad of other miracles. In the distant past, the gift of true psychic power was a rare and perilous anomaly, often leading those few who possessed it to become victims of superstitious persecution. Yet, as centuries pass, the number of psychers among humanity's galactic population steadily increases, signaling a profound and potentially perilous evolutionary shift. Each time a psyker taps into the warp, they disturb its delicate balance, creating a ripple that might fade or swell into a storm, feeding the insatiable hunger of a chaos god. Every psyker represents a pinprick of disruption within the warp, each one a potential seed for a warp storm, each one capable of rousing a chaos power to unimaginable conquest. A demonic invasion is akin to hell itself breaking loose upon reality. Free from the constraints of mortal existence, a demonic legion can materialize and vanish at will. Sometimes they gather in force for a grand assault. At other times, packs of demons roam the affected world, spreading terror, enslaving and slaughtering indiscriminately. Those mortals with even the slightest psychic potential are the first to suffer, as the influx of warp energy ignites their latent powers, incinerating them with magical flames, petrifying them into statues of stone, or causing their brains to detonate. Buildings are torn apart by poltergeist activity and sudden bursts of pyrokinesis. People are driven mad by the sounds of deranged screams and insidious whispers, while the air is fouled with unnatural stench. Conventional means are all but useless against a demonic invasion, for the very act of fighting these creatures only fuels the psychic energy that anchors them in real space, feeding on fear and hatred. Only by closing the warp rift can the demons be deprived of their power. Often there is no choice but to fight on until the warp rift naturally closes. Battles against demonic forces are unlike any other, for defensive structures and fortifications are of little use. An army must be prepared to respond swiftly to the most sudden and unpredictable appearances of its foes. The motivations behind demonic incursions are inscrutable. Even the tyrannids, utterly alien as they are, have a clear purpose: sustenance and survival. In contrast, a demon's objectives are often entirely opaque. They might seek to massacre millions, retrieve a single artifact, or avenge themselves on the descendants of those who once banished them back to the warp. Sometimes the demons have no goal at all, driven purely by opportunity and their chaotic nature. To battle a demon army is to confront a whirlwind of madness and despair. Even more troubling is the fact that the Immaterium cannot afford to let knowledge of such foes become widespread, for fear of inciting further chaos corruption. Survivors of these conflicts often face grim fates at the hands of the Inquisition, mind-wiped, quarantined in labor camps, or, in extreme cases, subjected to planetary-scale exterminators. Throughout the eons, the galaxy has witnessed countless warp-based calamities and demonic incursions. Since the establishment of the Imperial Inquisition in the final days of the Horus Heresy, even the mere possibility of such events is deemed too dangerous for the general populace of the Imperium to know. Such knowledge inevitably breeds heresy, just as surely as a decaying corpse breeds maggots. As a result, the vast majority of information concerning demonic incursions has been purged from Imperial public records. What little remains is confined to forbidden Imperial texts and heretical Xenos writings that have yet to be eradicated by the Inquisition. On rare occasions, the Immaterium can breach into the physical universe, creating what is known as a warp rift. A warp rift occurs when the barrier between real space and the Empyrean weakens, allowing entities from the warp to enter the material world. These rifts can form spontaneously or be intentionally created by the chaos gods or mortals through various means. Warp rifts can last for varying lengths of time, from fleeting moments to solar days, standard years, or even Terran centuries. They manifest in many forms, sometimes appearing as a seething whirlpool of raw psychic energy, other times as a terrifying glimpse into the realm of chaos. These rifts have also been known to appear as gates of green fire, clouds of impenetrable shadow, boiling lakes of pus, and other horrifying visions capable of driving mortals to madness. Typically, warp rifts are settled by the once mortal followers of the ruinous powers of chaos and become sites of monumental atrocities previously unleashed by these forces in the local region of space. Various factors can lead to the formation of a warp rift in real space, including the unpredictable movements of the warp causing a natural breach, the demonic possession of a psychic mortal, deliberate demon-summoning rituals conducted by chaos cultists, a breach in the barrier between real space and the warp triggered by immense suffering and death from a great war or atrocity, a warp drive implosion, or the collective will of the major chaos gods. Some of the most infamous warp rifts in the Milky Way galaxy include the Eye of Terror. The Eye of Terror was created when the Aeldari inadvertently caused the birth of Slaanesh. It is now home to the traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines and other human followers of Chaos, including cultists, Traitoris Militarum, and the Heretics and Traitor Titan legions of the Dark Mechanicum. The Great Rift, also known as the Cicatrix Maledictum in High Gothic, is a colossal tear in reality and a galaxy-wide warp storm that has effectively divided the Imperium of Man in half, known by other sentient cultures by various names, including the Crimson Path, the Mouth of Ruin, the Warp Scar, the Dothedian, Gork's Grin, and countless others. This rift was born in the aftermath of Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade in the year 999 of the 41st millennium. The Immaterium had been growing increasingly turbulent, disrupting travel and communication until the Materium could no longer withstand the strain, and a titanic warp rift tore across the galaxy from the Eye of Terror to the Hadex anomaly on the eastern fringe. To those on the Terran side of the rift, it appears as a tainted scar stretching across the sky. To those on the far side, it is the very gates of hell. The Hadex anomaly. The Hadex anomaly is a raging warp phenomenon at the core of the Jericho Reach in the eastern fringe. It casts a sickly red glow over countless worlds and represents far more than a mere navigational hazard or obstruction to astropathic communication. It is a cancer upon the fabric of space and time, swallowing entire star systems into its baleful influence. The anomaly expands and recedes like a monstrous heart, absorbing and disgorging solar systems over decades. Worlds bathed in its crimson light become saturated with its corrupt essence, while stars under its sway languish into clotted red orbs. Scholars and navigators have attempted to classify the anomaly alongside other warp-real space overlaps like the Eye of Terror and the Maelstrom, but it continues to defy all classification. The Hadex anomaly exerts a unique influence on both the physical and temporal realms, disrupting and sometimes entirely reordering the flow of time in its vicinity. The Maelstrom, located near the galactic core in the Ultima Segmentum, is a massive and ancient warp rift surrounded by a region commonly referred to as the Maelstrom Zone. This area of space is plagued by warp storms so intense that stellar travel is nearly impossible. Unlike the Eye of Terror, which was created by the birth of Slaanesh, the Maelstrom is believed by Imperial scholars to be a naturally occurring phenomenon, the Screaming Vortex. The Screaming Vortex is one of the great warp storms that separates the Calixis sector from the Coronus expanse in the halo stars. This vast, seething cauldron of Imperial energies is every bit as intense as the Eye of Terror or the Maelstrom, despite being smaller in size. The Screaming Vortex is a region where the thin boundary between reality and the Immaterium has been violently torn asunder, leaving a volume of space far larger than an average Imperial sector adrift from the physical universe, where the laws of nature no longer apply. The Storm of the Emperor's Wrath. The Storm of the Emperor's Wrath is a particularly fierce and persistent warp storm that has raged since the Age of Apostasy in the 36th millennium. The ecclesiarchy believes it was created by the emperor himself as a sign of his displeasure with the renegade High Lord of Terror, Gog Vandir, during the Reign of Blood. The storm currently consumes much of the Caradhriad sector. Van Grotha's rapidity. Van Grotha's rapidity is a warp phenomenon that pulses on the eastern fringe of imperial space. It manifests as a purple glowing whirlpool of destruction that stretches across light years of territory, posing a grave threat to those who enter without caution. Despite its dangers, the rapidity is valued by the Adeptus Mechanicus and rogue traders for its relative stability, allowing those who navigate it correctly to shorten interstellar journeys through the warp by solar months or even standard years. This phenomenon has earned the moniker Hell's Slingshot for its ability to catapult warp-borne spacecraft at incredible speeds. Medusa 5, a world settled in the 37th millennium to serve as a way station for vessels using Hell's Slingshot, was scoured clean of life in the 41st millennium during the fall of Medusa 5, caused by a warp storm spawned by the rapidity itself. The warp is an extraordinarily volatile medium, prone to sudden and violent disturbances that can transform vast regions into ferocious storms of incomprehensible destruction. These warp storms can tear through the dimensional barrier, breaching real space with cataclysmic force. The duration of these storms can vary greatly, lasting anywhere from solar days to Terran centuries. Warp storms have the power to isolate entire star systems and sectors, rendering the Imperium's usual methods of interstellar travel and communication impossible. When the warp surrounding these regions becomes too chaotic, starships can no longer safely navigate, and astropaths are unable to send or receive telepathic messages due to the overwhelming psychic interference. The duration of these storms is unpredictable, ranging from solar weeks to centuries, and they sometimes breach into the material universe, creating temporary warp rifts that can allow the forces of chaos to invade imperial space. More commonly, such vessels become trapped within the warp, a grim fate for their passengers, who eventually fall prey to the malevolent entities that dwell in that nightmarish realm once their Geller field inevitably fails. On rare occasions, a starship may navigate the warp for only a short time, only to re-emerge into real space to find that entire Terran centuries have passed. This phenomenon is more likely to occur when a vessel is traveling through a region of the warp affected by a warp storm or other unusual psychic turbulence. However, the warp is inherently dangerous and unpredictable, and every use of a warp drive carries a significant risk, no matter how routine the journey might seem. As we mentioned, the recent creation of the Great Rift has torn the galaxy asunder. This immense warp rift has carved a scar across the galactic north, severing the Imperium in two. The light of the Astronomicon can no longer penetrate this fissure, and from the gaping wound, the raw energies of the warp flow freely into real space.